Hello, it's Katie Colson here. Welcome to, or welcome back to my channel. And we are here for the third consecutive year of me putting myself through this.
I'm a clown.
What's this, you may ask? Oh, well, if you haven't seen one of these before, I will have 2003 and 2022's videos listed down below. But basically, it is where I venture into the 9th level of hell. I venture there and I stay there for an entire month and a half. Okay, that's the closest I can get for you to understand what I'm doing here. So what I do is I watch a bunch of booktuber best of that year and compile them into a Google spreadsheet. And this year I learned what a pivot table was. Do I understand how it works? No, it is pure witchcraft, pure sorcery, but it is amazing. And I love that. So the pivot table kind of funnels all the information down into a spreadsheet that tells me how many times the book was mentioned. Now, I am going to tell you that I had so much help, just indelible help, because I'm not a Google spreadsheets connoisseur, but some of my patrons are, and they so lovingly and willingly and happily, shockingly, made them for me. And I had input probably about 200 of the videos, and it ended up being a total of 392 videos. But those extra 192 were all watched, logged, and linked by patrons of mine who just held up their hand and said, we want to help you. Pitter patter, pitter patter, pitter patter. You know what I'm saying? And also, just like last year, I have to give a massive thank you to the creative, talented, hilarious, loving Gavin from Gavin Reads It All, who did create this thumbnail. Again, I take all of that information, and this year, luckily, I had a cutoff point, which we will get to when we talk about the honorable mentions, because there's some discrepancies. Anyway, I take all of that and I decide on maybe the top 12, top 11, top 10, whatever it may be, depending on how the numbers fall. And then I go and take all of the videos from all of those booktubers, and I try and take all of the clips and make them cohesive into one plot, summary, talking about the writing, talking about the characters, talking about what they loved, what made them give it 5 stars, what made them have it this high up on their list, what made them want to recommend it to you. And this is really, for the most part, I mean, yes, I love the statistics, but for the most part, this is just to show you how big and wide Booktube is, because I know that racism is real. I know that. And it is very clear when you type something in for Booktube that all you see is white faces. One of them being mine, I'm sure. But when you're watching this video, don't tell me there are not people you can follow, because there are. And there's going to be a link, a playlist of all the booktubers that are mentioned here. So you can scroll through. It's alphabetical, which did take a long time. Yes, you can scroll through, and when you see a face that you wanted to follow, there you go. There you go. I really highly recommend you broadening your tastes.
Amen.
Let's jump right into it, because this is going to be a long video, but it's a good one. I'm not even going to be humble about that. It's really good, and I'm really proud of it. Speaking of, if you've ever wanted to send a super chat, today is the day. Or I'll have my Venmo linked below, and hopefully running across the screen as I say this right now. If you've ever wanted to support me in that kind of way, right now is the time, because I do spend a month and a half making this, and I spend every waking hour working on it, and I don't make money on it. So not saying that you need to pay me. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, if you're feeling generous, today is the day. Thank you in advance, or thank you for thinking of me. Anyway, let's get into the honorable mentions. So I have 13 honorable mentions and 11 best books. Now, when I said earlier there would be some discrepancies, it's because I had cut off the deadline of when the booktubers videos had to be in. I was holding out hope for a couple people, but I had to cut it off somewhere. You know what I'm saying? And the reason there's a discrepancy is that I had cut it off, but my patrons, some of them didn't realize that, and they kept inputting more data for 2 or 3 days after I'd cut it off. So when I had screenshot what the numbers were, and then I went back, they had changed because there was more people, more books. So we'll get into that. Number 13 on honorable mentions was mentioned 12 times, as well as books 12, 11, and 10, all being mentioned 12 times, and that is Blood Over Brighthaven by M.L. Wang, Phantasma by Callie Smith, The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett, and The Wedding People by Alison Esbach. 3 books were mentioned 13 times, and that's Bury Your Gaze by Chuck Tingle, The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston, and Wild Love by Elsie Silver. There were 3 books that were mentioned 14 times, and those are I Who Have Never Known Men, The Women by Kristen Hanna, and Two Twisted Crowns by Rachel Gillig, the second in the Shepherd King duology. Okay, now we have the confusing numbers. The top 3 honorable mentions. Number 2 and 3 were both mentioned 16 times, which would have put them in the running for the video because I did cap it out at 16. We have Magnolia Park's Into the Dark by Jessa Hastings and Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. And then the number 1 honorable mention actually would have been book number 9 out of the 11 best books if it hadn't been for those 2-day discrepancy, because Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez was mentioned 17 times. And for our best books, books 10 and 11 were mentioned 16 times. So this would have superseded that. I'm so sorry, Abby Jimenez. I'm sorry. Listen, I did you dirty, and I'm so sorry about that. Okay. Let's crown the 11 queens of 2024. Books 10 and 11 tied with 16 votes. Now, my bias is going to be that there is book number 10 that I consistently see people talking about, and book number 11 where I heard everybody on earth talking about it for 1 month. And then I haven't heard a single person talk about it since. That's not a bad thing, but it just makes me want to put book 10 where it is and book 11 where it is. So book 11 is...
We used to live here.
We used to live here.
We used to live here. We used to live here.
We used to live here.
We used to live here. We used to live here. We used to live here by Marcus Cleaver.
Everybody's been talking about this.
And I was so worried it was not going to live up to the hype for me, but then I was pleasantly surprised when it did.
And if you have not heard about this book already, let me be the first to tell you about it.
So in this, we are following a couple,
Charlie and Eve. Eve and Charlie are like these lesbies, right? I don't think I've ever called lesbians lesbies before, but it's so cute.
Who just bought this house together.
That's kind of in a remote area.
And their intention is to flip it
to make a profit.
And Eve is home alone one day.
She's waiting for her partner to get home.
And a family arrives at the doorstep.
And the father says,
"Hey, I used to live here as a child. I know, it's pretty crazy. You probably care about that a lot, don't you?" And he's like,
"Can I show my kids around where I grew up?"
Just for nostalgia.
Immediately, no, I would never do that.
And Eve wants to say no.
Eve's just like a very people-pleasing type of person.
She's kind of a pushover.
So she makes the mistake of saying yes.
And Eve lets them in.
She says, "Please come in to my house. I would love to have you."
The problem is they won't leave.
And from there, some absolutely insane things happen.
Basically, every creepy thing you've ever gone into a Reddit deep dive on and worried about happening to you, that is what happens to this woman.
They start talking about different parts of the house and how maybe people have a different reality of the house or things are changing.
Yeah, it definitely messes with your mind.
And just seeing her grip on reality slowly go away and not knowing what's real
Made you feel like you were pulling your hair out.
I finished this book feeling as though there was no God, actually.
I felt like I was going insane the entire time I was reading it.
I was questioning the reality I live in.
How am I losing my sense of reality just from reading words on a page? Incredible.
One of the most unsettling books that I've read.
This is genuinely so scary.
It is terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying.
We get little pieces of lore and
some mixed media elements.
There's a secret code hidden throughout the text in different ways.
and then there's Morse code in here,
Leave us little breadcrumbs so we can figure out what's happening.
which was so fun. It was such a fun experience to figure it out as we went.
Really made me think and break down each moment in the book.
So if you like to have an interactive reading experience, this book also has some of that to offer you.
What's happening in this book?
There's, online theories and in different ways, different elements of this can be interpreted.
I had so many unanswered questions that I actually went down like this deep rabbit hole on Reddit.
Particularly, there are a lot of Reddit threads where people discuss this book and they fall down rabbit holes trying to understand it and put their theories together.
It's pretty low plot. It's pretty ambiguous. It had these Easter eggs for one of my favorite books of all time, House of Leaves.
This book had one of the craziest endings that I have ever physically read in my life.
It also kind of felt like homophobic, but not in a way that's like Marcus Kuehler's homophobic, but like just like in the way that I didn't get what I wanted. But anyway.
Is a book that you absolutely cannot put down.
You just lose yourself fully.
I literally think I read it in one sitting.
I was just obsessed with this.
I just wanted to read it and read it and read it and read it and not put it down.
It like gripped me so much, like I can't even explain it.
It's just a fun ride. Like, what can I say? It was a very fun reading experience.
But this author is definitely going to be one on my radar that I look towards for the future.
This book stuck with me.
But I've not stopped thinking about it since I've read it.
I will keep thinking about this. I have been thinking about this book ever since I finished reading it.
It's kind of funny that I put We Used to Live Here at 11 when I've read that and I haven't read book number 10. But I'm planning on it, and I hear this author talked about all the time, and I'm obsessed with this author. I gave one of her books 5 stars this year, and I'm planning on reading the rest of the series with Jan Agaton in February when we do our Chestnut Sprints on Patreon, which is so cute. And yes, I kind of gave away the author, but what book is it? Well, you're about to find out because book number 10 is...
Next up, we have Wild Eyes.
Wild Eyes.
Wild Eyes.
Wild Eyes. Wild Eyes.
Wild Eyes by Elsie Silva.
The second book
In her newest series.
And the Rose Hill series.
She has Wild Love, Wild Eyes, and then there's more Wilds coming.
These books are a spin-off series of the Chestnut Spring series, but they can all be read as standalones. Like, if you genuinely just wanted to read this one, you could.
In this one specifically,
We have West.
was a single parent to 2 young kids.
Not just one, but 2, and they're so fucking cute. A little girl and a little boy.
He is divorced. He's still friends with her. They co-parent very well.
The co-parenting was amazing. I really loved that aspect of the book.
And then we have Skyla,
Who is a super popular
country singer, the most famous musician, pop star in the world.
And Skylar is very frustrated with her life.
Because for the majority of her life, her parents have been controlling the type of music that she is producing.
And instead of being her parents, they have chosen to manage her career over being her parent.
But her parents do it in such a shitty way.
She feels like she's essentially a prisoner in her own life.
Basically just falling out of love with being a musician.
And she's at the end of her rope.
and she comes to Rose Hill to kind of escape from the cacophony and the chaos of her life.
And she is in town to record music with his best friend who had book 1. He has a recording studio.
Because she's trying to record an album like off-grid.
And when she gets there, she has a hilarious meet cute with our hero.
The two of them meet on the side of the road when Skyla is, trying to get a selfie with a bear.
And he's like, what the fuck is this crazy woman doing? She's gonna get eaten and die. I love them. I really do.
We find out West has been like Skylar's biggest fan, but he plays it cool because he's like not gonna fanboy all over her.
But he treats her like a normal human being.
And I also feel like he is so supportive of her and she's never experienced that before. This also is a male main character who is like happy to just sit back and watch you shine. I love that so much when a man is like that, like not threatened by a powerful woman and whatnot.
And somehow Skylar just burrows herself into his heart and the hearts of his children.
Again, kids can make or break a book. The kids in this one definitely made it.
Kids in this like really sold it for me. Like they were adorable.
I think that Elsie just knows how to write kids in an authentic, realistic way.
The reason why I ate it up so much is because he's the sunshine and she's the grumpy. Like she's reserved and he's the one that's really out there.
They have hilarious banter.
Elsie Silver is just insane at writing amazing chemistry, both physically and emotionally.
Just something that I really love.
For, again, a small town romance, like this just had so much emotional depth to it.
It was so good, so emotional. I was tearing up at the end.
I cried like a baby at several parts of this book.
Now, West.
I love this man so much.
I just love how Elsie Silver writes a man.
How attentive he was. He was sexy. We know how Elsie Silver's man gets down.
Like, that's why I love this book. I just have the biggest crush on him.
If you could listen to the audiobook,
The audio actually has singing in it.
a professional singer that came and performed songs.
I believe it's narrated by Teddy Hamilton, which is already an immediate yes.
And ooh, I just love them.
I was so addicted to this book.
I binged it. I loved every single second of it.
Elsie just impresses me every single time, and she truly is one of my favorite authors for a reason.
Elsie Silver just can do no wrong.
So, surprise, surprise, Elsie Silver strikes yet again.
We have a bit of a leap here from 16 votes to 19 votes, where we are tied for books 8 and 9. Now, this bias is very easy for me because book 9, in which I have ranked, I have not really heard about that much. And it is my side of Booktube, I do know that, but I am now absolutely have to read it. Like, it sounds so good. Like, these booktubers, they sold it to me. And that is...
Next up is James by Percival Everett.
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 This book has been everywhere. It's won so many awards.
It's one of the most popular books of this year.
This is a book that will not be new to you. You will have seen it absolutely everywhere.
Many people are talking about this novel.
I am willing to bet you already know what James is. If you don't know, I don't know where you've been or what you've been up to.
It is on everybody's list.
And that's a very good reason why.
I feel silly talking about it because I feel like everybody has heard all about this, but all the good things you've heard are true.
It's won a lot of awards, been nominated for a lot of awards.
It is a book that's been a huge critical and commercial success, and deservedly so.
Which just recently won the National Book Award. I was so happy to see this.
My money's on it to win the Pulitzer, to be honest. I think he will be a double winner.
It is, on the surface,
a retelling, a reimagining of
the adventures of Huckleberry Finn.
From the perspective of the runaway slave Jim.
Who prefers to be called James, hence the name of the book.
And it shows us him running away once he learns that he is to be sold off and separated from his family.
It was just this huge adventure of a man trying to figure out a way to get his family back to him.
There's so many times in Huckleberry Finn where James and Huck are separated, but we keep going with Huck. Well, what was James doing all that time? Here's the answer.
In the first half of the novel, the events are very familiar. They are the events of that book told from James's perspective. But as the book goes on, things start to go off track.
But yeah, some tweaks to the original story, which are quite provocative.
Through James, Jim, the character, is no longer a passive participant in Huck's adventure.
It gives agency to James and the decisions he makes throughout the novel.
It is a conversation about coming into your own as not only a Black person, but a Black man.
It has some really clever things to say about
the duality that is needed to be a Black person and to code switch so that you can fit into certain places and survive.
This idea of the performance that is demanded by white supremacy. This idea of the slave filter.
The language that slaves used when talking to their masters, which we see so often in film and TV, was all fake. It was a language, an accent, a kind of way of talking that they used to reassure their owners that they were stupid. It was a defense mechanism, not just the words they use, but the tone that they use.
But we also see this in Everett's version of Huck Finn, and the way that his characterization becomes this reflection of privilege and ignorance.
And then the white man trying to talk like the Black man, and the Black man is like, what are you doing?
It smacked you in the face with racial injustice.
Especially as it kind of explores the absurdity of all of these systems of oppression that Jim has to navigate.
He is an amazing writer.
The writing is beautiful.
Beautifully written.
And what I also love about Percival Everett's writing is that he doesn't write for the white gaze, which makes it really good to engage with if you are a Black American who's culturally connected.
I was so proud of Percival Everett for what he had accomplished with this story. And when I closed the book at the end, I burst into tears.
This is an instant classic to me.
A new American literary masterpiece.
Yeah, what an incredible novel.
No notes. Like, there's nothing that I could say to... I loved it. I loved James.
And James is one of the most impressive and inspiring novels I've ever read.
I think this is going to be around and probably be taught in schools at some point.
I think this might be the most important book that has been written this year.
Which of course means that book number 8 is the one that I have seen all over the place. Oh my God, in my face. Every day I see one of my Booktube friends talking about this book. Every day. And I did, in fact, buy the audiobook. And I have not bought the physical book because I am, in fact, upset about the cover change, as I know most of us are. And I love the original cover, but if Booktube doesn't match, we can't have a Libba Bray all over again. We just can't do that. Okay, I'm not willing to sacrifice my health and my sanity for that. And that book is...
Starting off strong with The Will of the Many by James Islington.
The Will of Many by James Islington. The Will of the Many by James Islington.
The Will of the Many by James Islington.
The Will of the Many
by James Islington.
The Will of the Many
by James Islington.
The Will of the Many
by James Islington.
The Will of the Many
by James Islington.
The Will of the Many by James Islington.
The Will of the Many by James Islington. This book is a kind of a Roman mythology / history inspired fantasy.
But set in kind of a fantasy magical world.
That is so fascinating.
So we're living in a society called the hierarchy.
The hierarchy being the government in this world.
They're called the Catalan Empire.
This dominating empire that has crushed nearly all nations.
I have been joking around that the world building / magic system is a giant MLM.
All you need to do is picture the Roman Empire, but make it into an MLM.
Everybody in this world has magic, but it's called will.
Those at the top of the hierarchy literally draw the willpower out of those below them.
And that goes on and on and on to the very top, this top ruler of the world.
He becomes stronger and stronger, so people at the top are like the strength of like 1,000 people.
And this creates a system where the elites have access to immense power, and the masses are left with very little.
So like I said, a pyramid scheme.
And this, of course, is a critique of societal inequality.
We follow an orphan called Vis.
And he ends up getting adopted by
this really high up senator in the hierarchy.
His new adoptive father is sending him to this academy,
a prestigious military school,
to basically be undercover
in order to find out what happened to this man's brothers,
while also trying to investigate some very sketchy behavior that's going on.
But aside from these tasks that he's assigned in the academy, he has his own motivations and things that he wants to do and figure out for himself, because he is actually also not who his adoptive father really thinks that he is.
He has to put on this front of just being a regular student and working his way through the ranks
in order to get access to these places that he needs
that will allow him to discover these secrets.
I loved the main character.
I was very surprised by how much I liked Vis as a main character, because normally I don't want to read about boys. I don't want to read about a boy main character, especially not in a fantasy world where it's mostly men. Like, that doesn't sound good to me.
The rest of the characters, the ensemble, are so good.
I found the fun family, like the friendships that were formed within the story, were just beautiful.
The villains are also a standout. They all feel very human. They're multifaceted. They're not just villains for the sake of being villains.
I was captivated the entire time
by how engaged and how completely immersed I was into the world that was created by the author.
You have such a good foundation of this world and knowledge of the world that you're able to just focus on the plot and follow Viz.
It reads very fast. It's very accessible as well.
I will fully admit that I looked at this and I thought, that's a boy fantasy and I'm not interested. But I was so wrong for that. There is a reason that everyone keeps hyping this up.
And then, plot twist.
Oh my gosh. The twists and turns.
Twist and turns.
The twists and turns.
I was wigless, I was gagged, I was gooped.
But what James Islington did with this story and this plotline by the end of this book, immediate auto buy.
And the ending. What the heck? The ending was insane. The plot twist at the end literally had my jaw on the floor.
And I cannot wait for book 2.
I loved this book so very much.
This book is a must-read. It's one of my all-time favorites now.
I would 69 this book if I could. I love it that much.
This is your man.
Yes.
Look at the screen.
That's mine.
And that's what you're going to settle for.
I'm going to stick beside him.
Again, we have a tie, but it's the last time. The last time. We have 2 books, books 6 and 7, that both got 21 votes. Now, book 7, I don't know this man. I don't know this man. I'm sure I've heard of this book, but I couldn't tell you anything about it. And that book is
When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker.
When the Moon Hatched
by Sarah A. Parker.
When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker.
When the Moon Hatched
by Sarah A. Parker.
When the Moon Hatched
by Sarah A. Parker.
When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker.
Oh my God!
Are you kidding? Are you kidding me with this book? My God.
This is a romantic fantasy.
I would say this is like a high fantasy romance.
We are following Reeve.
She is an assassin. She's working for the Resistance.
But the heroine, first of all, she does some stuff. Some pretty violent stuff, and I was like, oh, we are going there. And I really like that about her character.
And she ends up being captured and thrown into a dungeon where it is assumed that she will eventually be killed.
And the hero ends up saving her from being a prisoner.
On the opposite spectrum of Rave is Khan Vagor,
who is a king of one of the regions in this world.
And together they team up and try to solve mysteries that have echoes of the past.
There's also dragons in this world.
And when they die, it's so sad. They go up into the sky.
And they turn into stone, and they're called moons.
It's really cool. So there's like tons of moons in the sky.
In this book, we have a world that's made up of different gods, and all the gods are elemental. So we have like a god for air, we have a god for water, for fire, for earth, etc.
People in this world are able to hear the gods singing to them, and if they can learn the song of a particular god, then they're able to use specific powers. You can have fire power or water or air or something like that.
We have Fae that can't hear anything. We have Fae that can hear one song, so they can harness one element, like water, for example. We have Fae that can hear 2 songs, some that can hear 3 songs, and the more songs you hear, the more powerful you are, essentially.
But one of the things that I love about this book is that the romance is really, really, really drawn out. You guys, I love a little bit of tension in my fantasy romances, okay? And this book strings that tension out like literally to the very last page.
The love story is haunting and beautiful and like devastating.
This book is written in such a way that it almost feels like a puzzle you have to solve. You are really learning everything along with these main characters.
The writing is absolutely stunning. It's very descriptive, very flowery purple prose.
A lyrical writing style that I just fell into.
The world is so incredibly atmospheric.
I loved the world that was created in here. I thought it was very well thought out.
This book felt like playing an open world Zelda video game that happened to have dragons in it.
And Khan and Rave are characters that will live in my head forever.
But Khan, this man.
The MMC is the kind of man that will fight for you until his last breath.
It is one of the most unique fantasy romances that I have ever read.
So if you're into a vibey, flowery, flowy, dragon, fancy prancy romance,
it's this book. It's this book. This is the best one. Here, put it in your TBR pile right now because this is the best epic fantasy romance and fantasy romance that I've ever read.
This book has my whole heart.
Absolutely swept me away.
And yeah, obviously, I love this book so much.
I'm telling you that it's so funny that putting this together was like pulling teeth, because I swear I watched 10 whole videos and still could not tell you what this was about. Because, and to their credit, they kept saying that. They're like, this is really hard to explain. Even if I wanted to give spoilers, it's really hard to explain the summary of this book. And it must be, because I was very confused. And it sounds lovely. I just didn't know this man. But I do know book number 6. And that is...
Another dazzlingly perfect YA fantasy is Heartless Hunter.
Heartless Hunter by Kristen
Cicerelli.
Heartless Hunter
by Kristen Cicerelli.
Heartless Hunter
by Kristen Cicerelli.
Heartless Hunter
by Kristen Cicerelli.
The Crimson Moth.
The Crimson Moth.
The Crimson Moth.
AKA Heartless Hunter in the US.
So if you live in the UK, I believe this book is called Crimson Moth, by the way. If you can't find Heartless Hunter, it has a different title.
This book is dual POV. It's also set more during like a Regency-esque era.
They're going to balls, they're dressing up in these extravagant gowns.
And in this, we're following our main character, Rune,
who is trying to hide the fact that she's a witch.
In her everyday life, Rune is posing as this really stupid socialite.
A pretty princess, no thoughts in her head.
Comes off kind of dumb and just like a rich girl who doesn't care about anything.
Very much an act.
And she's actually like this very smart, intelligent witch
who really needs to keep her witchiness under wraps.
Because the witches are being hunted. They used to be in power, but now they're not.
Lest she be murdered like all of the witches before her.
Her grandma actually was executed for being a witch.
But by night, she is known as the Crimson Moth,
where she goes out and tries to save other witches who are in peril and has been killing witch hunters.
She's essentially a witch vigilante in this.
And then the hero of the book is, of course, Gideon,
who is the head of the guard,
which is literally like the head of the witch offers community. And he has some pretty legitimate reasons to hate witches.
So he catches wind that it might be the heroine is the Crimson Moth.
And so his mission is try to kill her.
And she wants to get close to him
in order to figure out where they're keeping all the witches before they are killed.
And she thinks that Gideon would probably have that information.
And he basically fake courts Rune. Ironically, Rune fake courts Gideon back.
They decide to fake date each other in order to get information from each other, but they don't know that they have concocted the same plan
plan to trick each other.
He's literally hunting her, and she is pretending to be someone else. So there's so many secrets, and the whole time you're just waiting for them to find out who each other are.
The tension was so good.
An actual enemies to lovers.
I mean, enemies to lovers is enemies to lovering. Like, it is so good.
But in the middle of it all, they catch feelings for one another.
She's also best friends with his brother. It is so good.
This was such a fun and witchy romantasy.
The writing was so magical and fun.
I cared so much about what happened to the characters.
I laughed. I cried a lot. And it's also a great intro to fantasy.
And I feel like the magic system was very straightforward. I didn't find it really confusing.
I have never read a more entertaining, dark, but tragic, heartbreaking story.
In the ending, I was like, excuse me, where is book 2 now?
Listen, I hear you. I hear you. You're saying, Katie, it's YA. Take a step back. Take a seat. You're not gonna like it. Well, you can't tell me what to do. You're not my real dad. I want to read it. Am I gonna like it? The jury's out, but they're pretty sure. You know, like they're pretty sure I'm not gonna like it. But these people sold me. I want to read it, and I'm not gonna lie. It is probably 50%, 60 even. Of the reason is because I love the cover, especially for the Crimson Moth. Anyway, book number 5 is one that I read and I actually put on my favorites. Wow, I can't believe I actually made it into this video. I really didn't think it was gonna happen. Book number 5 is...
Next we have Bride.
Bride.
Then we have Bride.
Bride by Ellie Hazelwood.
Bride by Ellie Hazelwood.
Bride by Ellie Hazelwood.
Bride by Ellie Hazelwood. Bride by Ellie Hazelwood.
This follows Misery.
Poor girl's name is Misery.
She's a vampire.
And Misery is the daughter of the most powerful vampire in existence. And Lo,
he's a werewolf.
And he is the alpha of like this pack. So he's like their leader as well.
The vampires and werewolves and humans don't really get along.
If we've seen Underworld, we know, you know, if we've seen popular culture, fan culture, we know this.
Like there's an interspecies war happening.
And their alliance has been on the precipice of breaking for quite some time.
But then her dad tells her that in order to strike up an alliance with the werewolves, she has to marry one of them.
And since she has kind of nothing going on besides her job, she agrees to be the sacrificial lamb to the werewolves.
She is being used as a token of like, we trust you, so here's a token of our trust.
And they obviously don't like each other, but they're doing it to have this kind of alliance between the two groups of people.
Misery Lark, the main character, her best friend and her... Misery will do anything for her. Anything. But her friend is missing, and she needs to find her.
And the only reason that the vampire agreed to marry the werewolf is because her friend has gone missing, and his name is the one clue she has about where her friend might be.
And so she has to move into the werewolf compound.
And she gets there, and luckily, the guy that she's being forced to marry is fine. Okay, look at the cover. He has a shaved head, and he's tall and huge. Okay? I wouldn't complain either.
But then she's like... I mean, I could get him and get him. He can get it and he'll get it. You know, like he'll get it and he'll get it. Do you know what I'm saying? I know you do know what I'm saying, and I know that you're wishing you didn't.
And goes from living alone to living amongst people she doesn't really understand, who don't really understand her.
But when she gets there and she realizes werewolves are not what vampires think and how people view them, she really gets to experience what it's like to be in a true family.
And maybe falling in love at the same time.
And it was a slow burn, which makes sense because it's a marriage of convenience. They literally don't know each other at the beginning while they're getting married.
Going from like this begrudging sort of like partnership to deeply caring for each other and then obviously wanting to bone down.
And goodness, it is steamy. I will tell you that for sure.
I loved this. I don't even care, I loved this. I knew what I was getting myself in for. I feel like a lot of the more negative maybe reviews for this book are people that maybe didn't quite realize what the topic was gonna be.
This one technically is not Omegaverse, it's like the preamble to Omegaverse.
And you know, it was an unbreakable bond sealed with Lo's incredible, inflatable, wacky, waving third arm.
What do you mean? What do you mean by shaking it? What are you doing? What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean?
I also learned a lot about werewolf lore, and because of some things that I saw in the intimate scenes, I went and looked up. I learned way too much about werewolf lore that I wasn't aware of before. And honestly, I'm a little scared because, oh my God, what are we doing? What are we reading?
That is going to make you think, wait, why am I into this?
And this made me want to get into the genre, I'm gonna be honest, because this has been hiding out there. There's a whole universe of these that I haven't gotten into, and I think I need to.
So again, if you're looking to dip your toe in the Omegaverse pond, this is a good starting place.
This took me back to
the nostalgic, like, Twilight days.
Of all the OG paranormal romances.
Thursday night, Vampire Diaries, I was sacked. This made me feel that way. This made me feel that way where I'm obsessed, I'm staying up all night reading it.
It was not only a delight to read, but it was so different than most of the other popular romances this year.
I think it was such a refreshing change of pace for Ali Hazelwood.
Knows what she's doing, and the fact that she took a dip into a different genre and still managed to make it incredible is a testament to her.
Because if Ali Hazelwood has no fans, I'm dead.
It is the definition of fun romance.
Honestly, what more could you want?
I loved it.
And the person who was reading the audiobook, rent was due. My goodness, they were giving quite the performance. I highly recommend, if you listen to audiobooks, I highly recommend the audiobook.
Book number 4. Like, I know I don't have a poker face, so we might as well go ahead and say it. I hated it. I'm so sorry. I just have to say it. I have to say it because if I don't say it, then you're going to be like, why does her face look like that? I love that for you. I love that for you. I'm not going to say anything else. Book number 4 was mentioned 23 times. I wasn't one of them, but it was mentioned 23 times. Katie, shut up. Shut up. Stop talking. Let's get into it. Book number 4 is...
I know. Okay, we have Quicksilver by Callie Hart. If you're new to my channel, you're probably going, this girl and her book taste. Anyway.
Book Talk's Romantasy Book of the Year, Quicksilver by Callie Hart.
Quicksilver.
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 Quicksilver
By Callie
Hart. Quicksilver by Callie Hart.
Quicksilver by Callie Hart.
Quicksilver by Callie Hart.
Quicksilver by Callie Hart.
Quicksilver. You either love it or you hate it. You either absorbed it or you DNF'd it.
Ring. Hello? Oh, I'm getting called out? Lovely.
So this book follows Sarah's Fane.
She lives in the 3rd ward
where they have these horrible conditions that they live in. They're in this drought and there is no water.
And the queen of this ward, she's a complete fucking bitch.
Queen is rationing water very small amounts, so people are dying of thirst, people are dying of hunger.
They are basically like, you either fight for your right to survive or you die.
She has always been very stealthy and she steals food and water for her brother and herself to survive.
And she does end up stealing
A gauntlet from a king's guard
to sell it for money.
something that will get her entire village into trouble.
She gets caught
And she's brought to the queen.
And sentenced to death.
They start beating her up terribly.
and they're literally about to demolish her, like take her out.
Now, right on the precipice of her being killed, a portal opens up
To the Fey world.
And out of it comes
Death himself, Kingfisher.
who is this deadly and very grumpy and attractive fae.
He pulls her into this other dimension
Because he explains to her that she is an alchemist that has not been found in very many years.
And one of the few people able to manipulate a certain compound that he believes will help save his people.
He makes a deal with her, tricks her really into helping him
Build these kinds of
Weapons that they're trying to build.
for their army.
But the problem is they don't know how to do that. So she is stuck here until she figures out how to do that and fulfills her deal with him.
And in return, she gets to go back to her brother.
This is a great example of a fantasy romance that has an interesting plot going on, as well as a really great romance.
Kingfisher was quite brooding.
Unbelievably grumpy and brooding.
He is grumpy, misunderstood, brooding.
When I first met him, I was like, I don't know about this one team. Like, I'm not sure how I feel about our male main character. And then he made me absolutely fall in love with him.
Fisher? Oh, so good.
Kingfisher has my whole heart.
And we all need Kingfisher in our life.
I would fold like a lawn chair. It wouldn't even be a hesitation. No.
This romance had me in the palm of its hands. I was eating it up. But my palms were not what I wanted to be eaten, if you know what I mean.
Stop it. Get some help.
The magic system in this book is unlike anything I've ever read before.
It was refreshing, it was different, it was unique, it was new.
And it's so funny. I don't think I laughed as hard with any other book as I did with this one.
It also had my biggest buzzword of them all, found family.
Really, really strong side characters as well. Not just the two main characters that were absolutely fantastic, but some side characters were absolutely hilarious.
I fell in love with Lorith, Renfis, Daelina, and Everlane.
And I cannot stop thinking about the end of this book.
Like, I was gasping
At several points of this book, I was just so gripped, and every time that we got another layer and we got another piece of information, I was just locked in.
The last, I've like 100 pages or so of this book, I had to read continually lifting my jaw up from the floor.
Binge this entire like 600 page book in one day. That's how much of it had me in a chokehold.
This book just shows that we want fun fae fantasy books again. Bring back more fairy books.
It was just the full package for me, to be honest.
Callie Hart, you have my undying appreciation for the absolute masterpiece that is this book.
This is where it's at.
This was incredible.
Book number 3 was mentioned 24 times, and it is the last book to be mentioned in its 20s. The other two are a lot more than that, a lot. But this one is another one that y'all were really trying to sell me. Y'all were really trying to sell me, and I fear that you did. And that book is...
The next book is One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig.
One dark window.
One dark window. One dark window. One dark window. One dark window.
One dark window. One dark window by Rachel Gillig.
One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig.
The Shepherd King duology.
The Shepherd King duology. Shepherd King duology. The Shepherd King duology.
We have our main character, Elspeth Spindle.
And she lives in this magical kingdom called Blunder.
The world is getting taken over
by this mist
where you can get an infection, and if you get an infection,
you'll basically go mad.
Set curse that actually leaves some magical powers behind to the individuals that it affects.
Yes, those powers may be cool, but it also comes with a price.
Elspeth is one of the infected who pretends that she was not infected.
Nobody actually knows that she's infected, and nobody knows what her magical power is.
Essentially, there is a monster living
inside of her head.
So she has like a voice in her head.
He is getting stronger and stronger as the days go on.
And then she starts losing control of herself.
It keeps her safe, but it is also her greatest danger and the greatest threat to her life.
We have an intriguing magic system that is based on a magical deck of cards.
Each card has a different magical ability.
There's a card where you can turn invisible. There's a card where you can use it as a truth serum. There's a card where you can read people's minds.
If you're the holder of those cards, you get that magic. And
so the legend of this world is that if you unite all 12 cards in the deck, you'll be able to break this curse that is over the kingdom.
And obviously certain cards are more scarce.
And everybody in the kingdom is really trying to collect them.
So it's kind of a race to who can get the cards first.
But the magic system in this book really emphasizes that magic comes with a price.
These cards take something from you and you take something from it. And so it's a tit for tat. It's a magic system that does have its consequences. Elspeth crosses paths with a Raven Yu, captain of the guard, Raven, who is actually the king's nephew.
They are reluctant allies to lovers.
And they want to go against the king to
unite the deck to be able to break the curse.
Her life takes a turn for the mysterious, for the dark, for the dangerous.
And then there's this romance.
Oh my god!
That just simmers in the background.
So I wouldn't necessarily call this either a fantasy romance or a romantasy, but it's interwoven into the plot in a very seamless way that also adds to the tension and the narrative itself.
Nice.
Yeah. So the second one, definitely.
Right.
The first one, yes.
If you like books because of the vibes. The atmosphere was to die for. So eerie and creepy and so perfectly gothic.
The beginning of the book will absolutely hook you.
This is what I want fantasy to feel like.
This is one of the most
unique magic systems
I have ever read about.
To what I typically tend to see in fantasy.
But I was just expecting this to feel like everything else, and it honestly did not.
Because her writing is just so
enchanting. It's very beautiful. It's very luscious,
Yeah.
but it does have this edginess to it, this darkness that makes it just really cool.
It is the most fun I've had reading a fantasy story in a very, very long time.
The amazing thing about this placement is that Rachel Gillig not only got book 1 in the Shepherd King duology on this list, but she also got the second book on the list as well, because it was in the honorable mentions, if you do recall, Two Twisted Crowns. Now, here's the thing. I do not count if somebody holds up One Dark Window and says, oh, One Dark Window, but this is really representing the duology. A lot of people said that, but I don't count that. You have to say the title of the book, okay? Because I need the title of the book for the video, okay? Is it all about me? No.
Yep.
But, so I don't do that. So this getting on honorable mentions and on best, an author mentioned twice, amazing. An author having their entire series mentioned? Amazing. Also, can we bring back duologies? Can we collectively decide to bring back duologies? Because I miss that. I really do. Book 1 and 2. I'm sure you know what they are. You just don't know what order they're in. Because if you've walked into a Barnes & Noble, if you've walked into a Waterstones, if you have scrolled through Instagram, scrolled through Booktube, anything, you've seen this on a thumbnail. You've seen this in a photo. You've seen this on a table being pushed to you by Far and Large. Because these last two authors are a pretty big deal. But I might shock you on what the order they're in, because I did not see this coming. I really thought what ended up being book 2 would assuredly be book 1. So what book was mentioned 53 times, and what author got dethroned as the always on the top of everyone's list? Well, that's book number 2, and it is...
Are you ready? Can you guess it? It's Funny Story by Emily Henry.
Funny story.
Funny story.
Funny story.
Funny story.
Funny story.
Funny Story by Emily Henry.
Funny story by Emily Henry.
Funny story by Emily Henry.
Funny
Story by Emily Henry.
Funny story by
Emily Henry.
Funny story
By Emily Henry.
Funny
Story by Emily Henry. Funny
story
by Emily Henry.
Wow, the power of women.
So it follows
This girl named Daphne, and Daphne is engaged to a man called Peter,
and he has a female best friend,
Petra.
And they are really, really close, but anytime people have asked them if they would get together, if they have feelings for each other,
he's always told her, I don't have feelings for her. It's just platonic. There's nothing there. She's like a friend. You know how they do.
Which is not true, because at the very beginning of this book,
Her fiance goes off on his bachelor party.
And his female best friend, Petra, goes on the bachelor trip. And so while he's at this party, him and his best friend confess their love for each other.
And he comes in the next day and he's like,
Hey, you know that female best friend I have?
who I said, like, you know, like, there's nothing to worry about there. We've never had feelings for each other.
Yeah, I'm actually in love with her. We're running off together, and also
You got a week to leave my house.
because she's gonna move in. And Daphne's there like, huh?
Now this really puts Daphne in an awful, awful position.
she moved her entire life to this town that they live in to be with Peter and to marry him.
She's in a new state that she doesn't know anybody in.
And she has no friends.
and she's like, okay, I done moved here for this man. I don't have nowhere to go. What am I gonna do? She's crying, boo-hoo, as one would.
So she actually is approached by Miles.
So enter in Miles, who is Petra's ex.
So Miles is heartbroken because Petra is leaving him.
But of course, the only other person who understands what she's going through is Miles.
And Miles offers her a place to stay at his apartment.
She decides to move in with her ex-fiance's ex. Her ex-fiance's new fiance's ex.
Because what else is she gonna do in that moment?
And then one day they get in the mail.
A wedding invitation arrives for Peter and Petra's wedding.
And Daphne kind of goes off the handle a little bit and she calls up Peter and she's like,
Yeah, I'll go to your wedding, but I'm gonna bring my boyfriend Miles.
and Peter's like,
Miles? What?
They decide to kind of team up and start kind of posting pictures, hanging out with the other.
And then they're like, you know what? Let's make our exes jealous and let's pretend to be dating.
So that they can go to this wedding together and kind of show Peter and Petra that they are completely fine because now they have each other.
I said it before, I'll say it again. Fake dating is one of my #1 tropes ever.
Fake dated.
Fake date.
Fake date.
fake date. Fake date.
Fake date.
Fake dating.
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 But very quickly they're like, actually, I want to kiss you on the mouth. This is not fake dating anymore.
And of course the fake dating turns into real dating.
They were polar opposites.
Daphne is very like type A. She has her life together. She likes to use a calendar.
Miles is quite like a quirky character.
Very laid back, happy-go-lucky guy.
They have this friendship that they strike up, obviously trying to comfort each other.
They commiserate together
over their shared experience.
And at the same time, both of them are working through their each individual kind of baggage.
but also get to know each other, get to know themselves, and figure out what exactly they want out of the next phase of their lives now that this thing has happened.
And then obviously they end up falling for each other. And Miles and Daphne have my heart forever.
And it's one of those things where after the book ends, like I kind of feel like these two people can weather actual hard times.
But Miles really stole the show for me.
I love him so much. I think he is so sweet.
He is my book boyfriend standard at this point.
I think a lot of my love for this romance comes from the fact that I just know it in my soul that Emily Henry wrote this while watching New Girl.
New Girl. New Girl.
New Girl.
New Girl.
It reminded me of like
Nick and Jess.
kind of.
Mostly being the main character, Miles,
Is 100%
Nick Miller coded.
Miles is Nick Miller.
Like, you know, being very laid back and whatever, let's just go with the flow.
If you like Nick Miller.
So if you love New Girl,
If Emily Henry told me she'd never seen New Girl before, I would call her a big fat liar.
Like, you cannot tell me she was not inspired.
It worked for me. It reminded me of New Girl. I don't know what to tell you, man.
I feel very attacked.
Relax. There's something so earthy and real and non-fictional about these two characters.
It just felt very real.
Real people.
They make real human mistakes.
Flawed and damaged, but real.
They're always tackling some big life choices, trying to navigate being an adult in this complex world we live in.
When I was reading it, I was like, yes, that is exactly how it feels trying to forge your path in the world.
Because I found it so relatable.
Because I could relate to the main characters.
And that's why her books are so well loved.
I don't think I've ever cried so hard reading anything.
It made me tear up.
It had me crying.
I cried.
I was getting annoyed. I couldn't read the words because my eyes were so blurry. This book had me laughing.
I laughed.
It had me giggling.
It is silly, it is funny, it is cute and steamy and wonderful.
It just did everything to me, so.
And listen, I get it. I'm sure some of you are very tired of seeing Emily Henry on all these booktubers favorites lists. It's not our fault that she slays every time.
I have given every single one of her books 5 stars.
There's just something about Emily Henry. She does it for me every time. She does it for me every time.
I don't know what we did to deserve Emily Henry, but I will never take that for granted.
I feel like this book touches a lot on like self-discovery and who you are without being in a relationship and realizing how much of yourself you've given away in order to be in that relationship. Daphne really lost herself in the relationship that she was in. Like, I've just built my entire personality around being my ex's partner. And so now that that has been ripped away from her, that now that I'm not that, who am I? She kind of has to learn how to rebuild her life and be an independent woman. I honestly learned so much from it. It taught me a lot about myself. It healed a lot of things within me. To be given an experience like this, even though this is fiction, when it can relate so heavily to your own lived experience and it can allow you to view it from an outside lens without having your own personal bias in the way, reading things like that can really help and they can heal you. And that is the beauty of books.
That's right. That's right. I can't believe it. I cannot believe it. Emily Henry got dethroned as book number 1, and it wasn't by Fourth Wing. What is the world coming to? What is the world coming to? I do not understand. I'm flabbergasted and so proud of the author of book 1. I'm so proud of her. It's a girl. I guess I spoiled that. But yeah, of course it is. Hello? Anyway, book 1 was mentioned 64 times. 64? The cutoff was 16. 64? The leap and bounds. It's literally crazy. Okay, you all know what I'm gonna say, or what they're going to say. So I'm gonna let them say it.
Ladies and gentlemen, on to my favorite book of the year, and that is, drumroll please, Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez.
Just for the summer.
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 Just for the summer. Just for the summer.
Just for the summer.
Just for the summer.
Just for the summer. Just for the summer. Just for the summer.
Just for the summer.
Just for the summer by Abby Jimenez.
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 Just for the summer
By Abby Jimenez.
Just for the summer
By Abby Jimenez. Just for the summer
By Abby Jimenez.
Just for the Summer
by Abby Jimenez.
Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez.
Just for the summer
By Abby Jimenez.
Just for the summer
By Abby Jimenez.
Just for the summer
By Abby Jimenez.
Just for the Summer
by Abby Jimenez.
Just for the summer by Abby Jimenez.
Just for the summer
By Abby Jimenez.
And I knew as soon as I finished this book, it was going to be my favorite book of the entire year. And that is Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez.
Of course. Guys, come on now. We have to put this one.
This is the third book in the Interconnected Standalone Part of Your World series.
They're all in the same world, so you do get to see like a character from Part of Your World and yours truly, and then in Just for the Summer.
This book follows Justin and Emma.
They meet in a very unconventional way.
Emma has terrible luck with dating, okay? And so does Justin. Basically,
They both seem to have the same curse.
because every person that they date,
Once they break up,
that person goes on to find
that person, the people
people they're gonna marry.
The one. The love of their life. Their soulmate.
They're happily ever after.
And this has happened time and time and time and time and time again.
So they're always like the stepping stone to get to the next person, and they're never the final person. They're never the one.
Terrible luck, right?
And one day, Justin is so fed up about it that he posts on Reddit
this theory of him being cursed.
Emma comes across the Reddit post.
She's like, oh my god, me too.
So she messages him.
She's like, funny story, the same thing happened to me.
They start DMing through Reddit.
And they end up sort of becoming pen pals a little bit.
Of course, it goes viral because of this curse, and all these women want to date him so they can break up with him and find the person they're gonna marry.
And so like, you're cursed, I'm cursed. So they kind of figure if they date each other,
when they inevitably break up,
they will then go on to find their soulmate afterwards.
And break this curse or whatever.
So they agree to meet and
fake date each other
just for the summer.
We could go on like 4 little dates, have 1 kiss, and then never talk again.
And they're like, wait, that sounds good.
Now, I see that that's a really crazy plot if you think about it, because he is a stranger that she met on the internet, and she's just like, I'm gonna come to your small town and we're gonna just date for the summer. But listen, all's fair in love and fiction.
They live on opposite sides of the country, but since Emma is a travel nurse, she is able to easily come to Minnesota for a few weeks.
So she decides to get a placement in his city
to give this romance a try.
You all know where this is going, right? Right. They end up falling in love with each other.
And we get to see their romance unfold.
The dates that they go on, Justin like sends her these little like questionnaires, like date questionnaires.
Where it says like, what activities interest you? Food preferences, preferred time of the date. Oh my god, I love this man.
So that he can take that into consideration to plan out the dates that he has with her. And then
he gives her like surveys at the end of the dates, which are so funny.
How did I do on this date? And I just love that.
And I'm just telling you, if the next time I go on a first date, if I don't get an email with a card to fill out of my preferences, I won't hesitate, bitch.
So in this case, both Emma and Justin have
very different but kind of turbulent family dynamics that they're dealing with on their own.
Emma has a very tumultuous relationship with her mother that comes into very much the forefront of the story.
And Emma is very unfamiliar with putting down roots
and not being able to remain in one place and be committed.
So she doesn't ever like really hunker down in relationships.
And Justin is having to kind of take custody over his younger siblings
because of something that happened with his mom.
And he never expected this as an adult to be the like dad to his siblings. And so this book is all about both of these characters really wanting to be in love with each other, but also realizing that they have to do a lot of internal work on themselves before they can fully be in love.
What I liked most about this book, first of all, Justin.
Oh my god! But Justin, the way I was blushing laying in bed at 1 o'clock in the morning reading this book.
He is so cute. He's so caring towards Emma. He's so understanding.
Just the sweetest, most cinnamon roll guy you will ever meet.
He is so thoughtful. He is an acts of service king.
If you are an acts of service girl,
if your love language is acts of service, you will love this book. And just something about this man doing everything possible to show Emma that she is loved and cared for and wanted is just, it's amazing. It's top tier. It's incredible.
He is the definition of if he wanted to, he would.
If he wanted to, he would.
If he wanted to, he would.
If he wanted to, he would. He is perfect.
A perfect man.
The ultimate book boyfriend.
And we need to protect him at all costs.
And I love that this book doesn't follow just the typical romance formula.
There's always like an emotional plotline to his stories.
Because she doesn't just write like these cute little relationships or this swoony male main character, but she writes heart and depth and heartaches into her books.
Abby Jimenez has this ability to seamlessly intertwine deeper topics without bringing the mood down of her book.
And so like the book starts off with like a really fun, almost like lighthearted, silly premise, but then this story actually ends up being like so heavy.
And then bam, Abby hits us as she always does with some raw realness in her books.
The emotional aspect of this book was beyond phenomenal. The exploration of themes of like abandonment and mental health and how those things can deeply impact your romantic relationships.
It's honestly making me emotional just to think about it right now.
This book definitely made me cry.
It made me cry. It had me tearing up.
I cried like a little baby.
Definitely sobbed pretty much from halfway through this book all the way to the end of it.
It changed something in my brain chemistry.
Obsessed.
And oh my god, was this book so fucking good.
It's an art to make something this engaging this consistently. Truly.
I just love that woman's brain. It's so great.
I did read this book. And if you're wondering why I don't have it on my shelf and why I didn't rate it on Goodreads, it's because the main character's name is Justin. And that's the name of my biological brother. So I was listening to the audiobook and I wanted to dry heave every time the name was said. Like, I don't want to do that. No. Please, God, that's disgusting. So I didn't rate it because I don't feel right doing that because it tainted the entire experience for me and I was not mature enough to get over it. So yes, great book. Abby Jimenez. Golf claps for you. Theater claps for you. She really came out swinging. She dethroned the rom-com girl, Emily Henry. That's crazy. That's like beating Taylor Jenkins Reid in like a historical romance. Like, that's crazy. So yes, I'm happy to see her at the top of the list, and I am so happy that we are wrapping this up because it means that I'm done and I finished it and all my hard work is gonna pay off because you're all gonna watch this video. You're all gonna watch it and you're gonna watch it again. And then you're gonna send it to your mom, you're gonna send it to your grandma, to your granddad, to your great uncle, to your cousin twice removed. You're gonna send it to your neighbor who hates you. You're gonna send it to everybody. It's gonna be the spam of the century, this video. Do you understand? Because I need this to be watched. I need it. All I'm saying is that if you love me, you will hit the like button. If you love me, you will subscribe. If you love me, you'll sign up for my Patreon. If you love me, you'll do a super chat. If you love me, you'll do Venmo. You'll do something. Because what shows love if not monetary value? You know what I'm saying? The capitalism is real, it's strong, and this is America. Hi, hello. This is the most rambly, weird outro, and I don't know why, but I am obsessed with it. So yes, here's to another year. And I hope I do it again next year, but then again, I also hope I don't because this takes up my entire month and a half and I do nothing else. And it's actually crazy. So hopefully you love this video. And if it doesn't get good numbers, I'm not gonna do it again. I'm so serious. I'm sorry, but I'm serious. So yes, we are wrapping it up. I hope you are all having an amazing day, evening, night, dusk, dawn, whatever it is you're having in whatever part of the world you are currently having it in. And I will see you in a video now, coming very soon. Bye. Oh my, I just slapped you. I'm sorry, that was uncalled for. The only one that was mentioned 3 times, I'm pretty sure, is Jessa Hastings. No, I'm wrong. What am I talking about? Oh my God.